I knew it was going sideways the moment I walked into his office and saw the wine. Noon on a Friday, and the CEO of a $600 million firm was swirling a Malbec like we were in Napa and not overlooking a warehouse full of overworked analysts and shipping clerks. "Close the door, would you?" he said, not even looking up. My stomach dropped. I've been in corporate long enough to recognize that tone. It's the same one they use when they're about to tell you someone's being let go, or you are, but it wasn't me this time, not directly. He leaned back, lazy smile plastered across his sunburnt face like this was just another weekend round of golf. "We've got a small problem. Maria's been loud. Too loud." I didn't respond. Maria was my direct report, sharp, meticulous, a single mom who once caught a 2.3M tax credit miscalculation the CFO missed. She didn't get loud unless something was very wrong. He continued, "She's making noise about the bonus discrepancy, says she's owed the full 180K, which she technically is, but..." He shrugged, like facts were suggestions. "It's discretionary. We can use that language." Then he picked up a glossy folder and slid it across his desk toward me with two fingers like it was covered in something contagious. Inside, a pre-drafted email from me to HR. Soft, non-confrontational. The kind of sanitized corporate nonsense that makes your skin crawl if you've still got a spine. It read, "In light of recent departmental restructuring, we recommend reevaluating discretionary bonuses, particularly those under performance review scrutiny." Performance review scrutiny. Maria's last review was perfect, signed off by me, HR, and him. I knew because I wrote it, and he signed it with a smile and told her, "Best numbers we've seen all year." But now, apparently, those numbers weren't convenient. "Send that to HR," he said, swirling his glass. "We need alignment." That word again. Alignment. In this place, it meant complicity. I stared at the screen. My name was at the bottom, already typed, already time-stamped. "I'll take a look," I muttered. He grinned like I'd agreed to clean up a coffee spill, not sabotage a woman's livelihood. He tapped the folder twice and picked up his phone, already moving on to weekend plans. I walked out, sat at my desk, and opened the draft. The cursor blinked at me like it was daring me to hit send. I didn't. I clicked save. Then I locked my screen and stared at the wall. If you've made it this far, take 2 seconds to like the video and hit subscribe. It keeps these stories going and lets us keep bringing the truth behind the titles. 97% of you never subscribe, and it means the world to the team. Now, back to it. I could feel something crawling under my skin. Not fear, not yet. Just that cold awareness that someone else's game just got handed to me, and I was expected to play it with a straight face. I wanted to walk into Maria's office and tell her everything, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not without a plan. I opened our payroll system and started pulling numbers. I needed to know if she was right, if this was just some bureaucratic error, or if the CEO was playing dirty with a woman's bonus because she had the nerve to ask for what she'd earned. I didn't know what I'd find, but I already knew what he expected me to do. And I already knew I wouldn't. I stayed late that night, long after the lights flicked off in finance, and the janitor gave me his usual nod on his second pass. Everyone else had clocked out hours ago, carrying their reusable water bottles and petty grievances into the weekend. But I wasn't moving until I knew. Not guessed. Knew. Maria's bonus wasn't just some rounding error or discretionary handout. It was tied to a strategic contract realignment she executed flawlessly. 3 new vendors onboarded, 15% operating cost reduction, and, my personal favorite, a compliance audit that came back exceptional. That bonus was locked, triple signed, and buried under a heap of approvals so airtight I could practically hear the digital papers sigh with relief. Still, I needed to see it all for myself. I pulled up the payroll logs. Our system isn't exactly hacker-proof, but it's got enough layers to make the average VP whine. I logged in through the back-end audit portal, yes, the one only compliance and select directors use, and started pulling everything with her name attached. Expense approvals, review confirmations, disbursement triggers. I sorted by timestamp, exported to PDF, then did it again in Excel just to be safe. Cross-referenced the performance dashboards. Every single indicator was green, target met, above expectations, fully eligible, and then there it was. Her bonus, approved and released internally 2 weeks ago, but it was sitting in held status. No disbursement scheduled, no explanation. Someone froze it. That someone wasn't me, wasn't HR either. They don't have the clearance. That left one name. His. The CEO had manually flagged it. No paper trail, no comment, just held pending discretionary review. I felt the heat creep up the back of my neck. This wasn't strategy. This was a threat in a suit. I copied the entire flow, complete with digital sign-offs and internal routing notes. Even grabbed the server logs showing when it was altered. I zipped everything into a password-protected folder, named it something innocuous like Vendor Renewals Q3, and uploaded a backup to a secure drive only I use. Then I made another, labeled the second Invoice Backups. Paranoia isn't a flaw in this company, it's a survival trait. I sat back and stared at the screen. All that effort, all that performance reduced to leverage. He knew exactly what that bonus meant to her. Single mom, 2 kids, just bought her first house after years of renting, and now he wanted her to throw away her integrity for a paycheck he already owed her. That's the part that burned the most. It wasn't just about silencing her, it was about teaching everyone else what happened when you asked questions. They use money like a muzzle. Smile while they do it. I opened my calendar and sent Maria a sync request for Monday morning. Just the 2 of us. No context, no agenda. I didn't want to spook her. She had no idea I was already moving pieces in the background. No idea that by the time she walked into that meeting, her receipts were already safe. That if they tried to bury her, I'd already marked the grave. This wasn't about one bonus anymore. It was about the silence they'd bought for years, and the first voice that refused to stay quiet. We met at a diner halfway between her apartment and the office, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths, faded Coca-Cola clocks, and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed through a sock in 1982. She picked the seat with her back to the wall. That told me everything. Maria was already in survival mode. I slid into the booth across from her and gave a half smile. She returned it, tight-lipped. She looked tired, older than she had the last time I saw her across the conference table beaming over vendor consolidation metrics. Her lipstick was faded, eyes heavy, the kind of weight that doesn't come from work. It comes from knowing you're being hunted in a place that pretends to protect you. I didn't sugarcoat it. "You're not crazy," I said. Her eyes flicked up. "The numbers were clean. The bonus was valid. You earned it." She swallowed hard and glanced at the waitress like she was deciding whether to order coffee or just run. "They threatened my job," she said quietly, hands cupped around her water glass like she needed something to hold or she'd come apart. "They said, if I keep making noise, they'll call it insubordination, that it'll complicate my employment." I didn't react. I'd heard those exact words used before. I'd seen them destroy people, wrap it in HREs, slap a culture concern label on it, and suddenly you're a problem, not a person. It was textbook, weaponized ambiguity. "They're trying to make you feel alone," I said. "Isolated, so you'll back off quietly and thank them for the opportunity." Her lip twitched. "Yeah," she whispered. "Exactly." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Don't withdraw the complaint." She blinked, like she didn't expect that from me, like maybe I was about to suggest a compromise or some neutral path forward. I wasn't. Not this time. "If they retaliate again, you need to document everything, not just meetings, not just HR memos. I'm talking Slack messages, comments, any accidental oversights, schedule changes, vague threats." "They're already freezing me out," she murmured. I nodded. "Then let them. It'll make the paper trail clearer." She stared at me for a long second, like she was trying to decide what team I played for. Then I reached into my bag and slid a card across the table. No company logo, just a plain burner Gmail I'd made the night before under an alias I hadn't used in years. "If anything shady comes through, forward it there. Blind CC it if you have to. Save copies for yourself, but keep them off your work drive. Trust me." Maria picked it up slowly. She read it twice. "This is anonymous? Routed through 3 servers and a VPN. It doesn't trace back to you or me. If you lose access to anything, or if something vanishes from your inbox, I've got you covered." She held the card like it might vanish. "Why are you helping me?" I paused. "Let's just say I've seen this playbook before, and I'm tired of watching it work." She sat back, card still in hand, and for the first time all night, her shoulders dropped an inch. Not relaxed, but no longer bracing for impact. "I thought I was crazy," she said softly. "You're not," I said. "You're just inconvenient." Her laugh came out more like a breath, but it was something. We didn't stay long. I paid the bill while she slipped the card into her wallet. No hugs, no dramatic exits, just two people walking back to their cars in the dark, pretending we weren't planning a war. She still didn't know what I'd seen in the logs, or what I'd saved, or how long I'd been documenting this company's patterns like I was building a case. Because I was. But for now, she had a line of defense. Quiet, simple, a whisper, not a scream. And that's how it had to start. It landed in my inbox at 8:16 a.m. sharp, before coffee, before the servers finished syncing, before the building even warmed up from the overnight chill. Subject line, next steps, bonus clarity. Classic corporate bait and switch. I opened it without thinking, expecting another vague directive, maybe a let's touch base about alignment or optics or whatever buzzword they'd agreed on in this week's strategy huddle. But what I saw was a 3-line grenade. Confirm she's dropped the issue, otherwise flag her bonus for discretionary reassessment. We need to remind people who signs checks. No hello, no preamble, just pure weaponized arrogance. And he'd sent it to HR, with me CC'd. Like this was just another routine admin task, like we were discussing office catering or printer ink. I stared at it for a full minute, rereading that one sentence like it might change if I blinked hard enough. Flag her bonus. Discretionary reassessment. Remind people who signs checks. It wasn't just unethical, it was textbook retaliation. And the idiot had put it in writing. The head of HR replied 15 minutes later with her usual squirmy deference. Understood, we'll monitor closely. No questions, no resistance, just complicity with a polite font. I didn't react, just hit reply, typed one word, received, and hit send. No punctuation, no warmth. Just confirmation that I'd seen it, logged it, and knew exactly what they were doing. Then I opened the draft folder I'd built the night after our diner meet, uploaded the thread, tagged it with today's date, and waited. It didn't take long. That night, the burner account pinged. One new message. Subject, forwarding. In case. Maria had sent it. Not just the CEO's email, but the whole thread, her internal responses, HR's weirdly chirpy follow-up asking if she'd reconsidered her concerns. And the final kicker, her polite reply declining to withdraw the complaint. No emotion, no fire, just a firm line in the sand. I sat back in my chair and let out a slow breath. She'd done it. She didn't flinch. I opened the metadata on the original email and confirmed the server timestamps, downloaded headers, printed PDF versions, and archived a copy on 2 drives, one local, one cloud-based, both encrypted. Then I printed a hard copy and slid it into a folder labeled Retention Legal, because that was the moment it stopped being a dispute. That email wasn't just a mistake, it was a confession. It was the kind of thing attorneys circle in red and frame for juries. The kind of sentence that turns 6-figure disputes into 7-figure settlements. It was retaliation in high res, signed by the man who bragged about being too smart to ever get sued. And the best part? He'd CC'd me. I was no longer a bystander. I was a witness. That night, I poured a drink, opened my laptop, and stared at that one line again. Remind people who signs checks. He would, eventually, but not the way he thought. They didn't even have the guts to look her in the eye when they did it. HR summoned her at 9:07 a.m. on a Tuesday, midweek, mid-morning, mid-nothing. No context, just a pop into room 4A when you have a moment. I watched her walk past my desk on the way there. Her face gave away nothing, but I saw her hand tighten slightly around the notebook she always carried. Her armor. She was in there for 11 minutes. When she came back, she didn't speak. Just sat down, opened her laptop, and stared at the screen like it had personally betrayed her. I waited an hour, then messaged her. Walk? She said yes. Outside, behind the building, where the security cameras didn't reach and the smokers still swapped real stories, she handed me the new assignment summary they'd slid across the table like it was a promotion. It wasn't. It was a padded coffin. Special Strategic Review Liaison, the document said. No listed goals, no key deliverables, no cross-functional partnerships. Just a line about temporary reassignment pending realignment of business priorities. Translation. Go sit in a corner, shut up, and wait to be forgotten. No team, no meetings, no visibility. Her access to internal tools had been downgraded. She was stripped from client dashboards. Even her badge access was reconfigured. She couldn't enter the analytics floor anymore. They buried me, she said quietly. Not yet, I replied. They just laid out the shovel. We didn't rage, there wasn't any point. She knew what this was, so did I. They wanted her to quit so they could say it was her choice. No lawsuit, no complaint, just another realignment casualty. But she didn't give them that gift. She walked back in and sat at that ghost desk like it meant something, opened up her laptop, created a spreadsheet labeled Daily Work Summary, and started logging every non-task they fed her. No work? That went in. No feedback? Logged. Every hour without guidance, every ignored message, every passive-aggressive silence from her so-called manager, it all went in, and I watched it. Watched how she let the silence stretch out until it wrapped around them instead of her. At night, she'd forward me the logs, quiet emails with subject lines like "Two's recap" or "status, nothing changed." Each one a receipt, each one a nail. By the end of the week, she had a file so clean it could be entered directly into evidence. That Friday, we met again. Not in the diner, too exposed now. This time, a bookstore cafe with heavy chairs and bad jazz playing too loud. She ordered tea, hands steady. "It's time," she said. I nodded. She slid over her draft resignation. It wasn't emotional. That was the power of it. No accusations, no rage, no threats. Just facts. Bullet-pointed, calmly written. It cited a pattern of sustained, intentional reassignment to non-substantive duties following a protected activity, and constructive termination due to hostile retaliation in contradiction of both company policy and state labor code. We reviewed it line by line, tightened 2 sentences, added a time-stamped attachment log, and printed it. Monday morning, she walked into HR's office, handed it to them with a smile, and left the building. No scene, no fight, no closing speech, just a woman who walked out with her spine intact and a folder full of facts. And just like that, they thought they'd won. They didn't know what we'd been building. They didn't see what was coming. They thought she'd disappear like the others. There'd been whispers before, other employees who got too loud, too precise with their complaints, a male analyst who caught an equity miscalculation and was restructured, a woman in logistics who flagged toxic manager behavior and was rotated to a non-critical function. Always a new title, always a quieter hallway. Then the LinkedIn update 6 weeks later, as if the exit was mutual. Maria wasn't that kind of story. On a rainy Wednesday morning, 6 business days after her resignation, she filed a formal labor board complaint. I didn't hear it from her. I didn't need to. The internal Slack lit up like a fuse had been lit somewhere deep in legal's lungs. Words like response coordination and containment strategy started creeping into cross-functional threads. HR went silent. The CEO called 2 closed-door meetings with legal and key personnel. I wasn't invited to either. Good. I preferred to stay off their radar. The complaint itself was surgical. It outlined the timeline of events from her initial bonus inquiry to the sudden reassignment. It attached the performance review, the emails, the job description she was given with no tasks, the note from the CEO about reminding people who signs checks. It cited labor code, precedent cases, and included a detailed breakdown of retaliation patterns in bonus-related disputes. I got my hands on a copy. Let's just say I knew where to look. And the second I read the submission header, I knew what had to happen next. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, lights low, the hum of my refrigerator the only noise besides the thrum in my chest. I opened my private folder, the one labeled Vendor Renewals Q3, and pulled the files. Internal chat logs, her bonus approval trail, HR's response cadence, and yes, his email. The one with the smile baked into the subtext, the one that said, flag her bonus and remind people. I drafted my affidavit in a Word doc, just the facts, no opinion, no commentary, what I saw, what I saved, when I saved it, and why it mattered. At the bottom, I signed with initials only and submitted it anonymously through the Labor Board's protected third-party submission form. Then I closed my laptop and poured a drink. By morning, the Labor Board had it, along with the full attachments. They were now a matter of federal record. It didn't take long for the company to sense the shift. HR sent out a vague all-staff memo about upholding our shared values of transparency and fairness. Legal tried to spin up a timeline of events that painted Maria as overly sensitive and resistant to feedback. I saw the rough draft. It was pathetic. Half their claims contradicted time-stamped Slack messages and approval logs already submitted to the board. I played dumb. I acted surprised when they mentioned a complaint was filed. I nodded in meetings. I asked how they planned to support the narrative. I even offered to pull some reports to help with their response package. They had no idea that the logs they were trying to manipulate were already locked in with the board. No idea that the affidavit came from inside. No clue that the trap was set, and the bait was their own arrogance. Maria, meanwhile, stayed quiet. She didn't post, didn't tweet, didn't gloat, but I knew she was watching and waiting, because fear hadn't worked. And now the game was ours to finish. It happened at 5:41 p.m. on a Thursday, one of those corporate twilight hours where the day's real ugliness tends to surface. The kind of hour where most people have already shut their laptops, clicked off their ring lights, and started pretending their phones are dead to avoid one last task. But not him. He was still fighting the invisible war he thought he could win with threats. The subject line of the email said simply, "This ends now." I'd seen that phrase before, usually in overdramatic sales threads when someone missed a target or a client threatened to walk. But this one had real teeth and stupidity. I clicked from CEO to legal counsel, CC senior HR lead timestamp, 5:41 p.m. This all started with a bonus dispute. If she'd just shut up, we wouldn't be in this mess. She had to make it a crusade. I'm done playing nice. Drop the case or no one gets their bonus this quarter. I don't care if it makes people scream. Maybe that'll remind them who signs checks around here. No ambiguity, no plausible deniability, no corporate euphemism to smudge with legal grease. Just plain old-fashioned retaliation. Broadcast like a tantrum with bullet points. The drop the case line was the nail, but it was the kicker that made my hand tighten on the mouse. Maybe that'll remind them who signs checks. Again, the same phrase, like it was his personal brand of justice. The problem was, now it was written in the middle of a legal firestorm, and this time he sent it to people who knew better. I stared at the screen for a second, then hit print. One copy. No digital trail. Straight into the black accordion folder in my locked drawer, right next to the burner email logs, the performance dashboards, and the Slack screenshots. This was no longer a labor board complaint. This was scorched earth evidence, a direct order to withhold compensation in response to protected legal action. And he didn't even try to hide it. That's what stunned me. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was panic, wrapped in ego, trying to claw back control like a drunk man breaking his own windows to prove he owns the house. By the next morning, HR was moving like ghosts. Counsel didn't return messages. I passed the CEO in the hallway and he didn't even glance at me, just kept walking, jaw tight, muttering something under his breath. He knew that email had gone too far, that someone might have saved it, that reminding people of his power had done the exact opposite. I didn't gloat, not yet. This wasn't about personal satisfaction. This was about seeing a bully step in his own trap. Watching him realize too late that his authority was never absolute. That the moment he put retaliation in writing, the game shifted. From dispute to documentation. From silence to record. From whisper to verdict. Vindication wasn't a feeling anymore. It was a paper trail. And I had it. They booked the meeting under the most generic name they could think of. Clarification discussion. Bonus policy. No names, no details, just enough to get plausible deniability if anyone peeked at calendars. The invite came from the general counsel's assistant, flagged with high importance. I clicked accept and marked it private. They weren't going to ambush me. I walked in already holding the blade. The conference room they used was the one with the fake wood table and the bad fluorescent hum that made everyone look like they hadn't slept in a week. It was cold. Not temperature-wise, intent-wise. 2 chairs across from each other, a laptop already open with some vaguely professional spreadsheet minimized behind a legal memo. She looked up as I walked in. Lisa Mathers, General Counsel. Immaculate suit, tired eyes. She gestured to the seat across from her. "Appreciate you coming," she said, voice clipped. "Just a few things we need to go over." I nodded, didn't bother with pleasantries. She took a breath like she was trying to keep things neutral. "You were CC'd on some communications recently regarding the bonus issue. Maria's departure. There's been a misinterpretation of intent." She didn't look up when she said it. "We're hoping to clarify internally before this escalates." I said nothing. Let the silence stretch. She shifted slightly in her chair. We'd appreciate your support if you're willing to provide a statement affirming the context around those communications, that there was no intent of retaliation. I stopped her with a slow, deliberate movement, reached into my bag, pulled out a manila folder, slid it across the table. She looked down at it, confused at first. Then she saw the signature. Her whole face changed, not just shock, awareness, the realization that the battle they thought they could contain had already bled into open ground, that their leverage wasn't leverage anymore, that this wasn't a negotiation, it was an obituary with footnotes. "This is already with the labor board," I said calmly. Her mouth parted like she wanted to say something but couldn't decide between a threat or a plea. "And no," I added, folding my hands on the table, "I won't be retracting it." The room went still. Even the fluorescent hum seemed to drop a decibel. She stared at the affidavit like it might self-destruct. Then she reached for it slowly, scanned the first paragraph, and let out a breath that sounded a lot like surrender. This paints a very different picture," she muttered. I didn't respond. She wasn't talking to me. She was already building the fallout narrative in her head, trying to figure out how to spin this into a procedural misunderstanding instead of what it was, premeditated retaliation with full executive knowledge. And now it had witnesses, documents, time-stamped records, a signed affidavit from a senior-level staff member with access to the full workflow chain. She closed the folder and looked at me with something I hadn't seen from her before. Not anger, not strategy, just defeat. "We'll be in touch," she said. I stood. "I'm sure you will." As I walked out, I passed 2 HR reps waiting in the hallway, wide-eyed, pretending to talk about scheduling. They couldn't meet my gaze. The coldness in that room hadn't left. It was seeping outward, into the building, into the leadership ranks. Because for the first time, they weren't asking how to cover it up. They were asking who else knew. And the answer was, enough. The hearing room wasn't what you'd expect. No wood-paneled drama, no gavel slams, just gray carpet, stale coffee, and a long table where lives quietly pivoted while name tags curled at the edges. The labor board offices were built for bureaucracy, not justice, but justice didn't care about scenery. It cared about documentation. And we had documentation for days. Maria sat 2 chairs down from her attorney, her posture straight but relaxed, like she already knew the ending and was just waiting for the credits to roll. Her suit was navy, plain, unassuming, the kind of outfit you wear when you want to look cooperative, not confrontational. Across from her sat 3 people from our company's legal team, internal counsel, 1 outside defense attorney, and a junior HR analyst trying very hard to pretend she wasn't part of the circus. The CEO didn't show. Of course he didn't. Cowards rarely walk into the courtrooms they built. The board panel was quiet at first, flipping through binders, clicking through screens, asking questions meant to test tone more than facts. And at first, the company's team stuck to their script. Process ambiguity, departmental confusion, miscommunication. They tried to frame Maria's reassignment as an internal restructuring and her withheld bonus as a pending evaluation. Words polished and neutralized within an inch of their meaning. It might have worked, if not for the emails. One of the reviewers, a man in his 60s with sleeves rolled and reading glasses perched low on his nose, scrolled slowly on his monitor. He didn't interrupt. He didn't raise his voice. He just waited until the company's outside counsel finished their 4th attempt at explaining why Maria's bonus had coincidentally been frozen days after she filed a formal inquiry. Then he tapped the screen once. The click was louder than it should have been. "You're telling us this was all unrelated," he said, voice dry. "That her complaint had nothing to do with the bonus being flagged?" "Yes," the attorney said, already faltering. "That's our position." The reviewer nodded, then turned his monitor slightly so it faced the others. Everyone could see the CEO's email, the one that read, "Confirm she's dropped the issue. Otherwise, flag her bonus for discretionary reassessment. We need to remind people who signs checks." He let the silence stretch just long enough for discomfort to take root. Then he looked back at the company's side and said, with the calm of someone ordering lunch, "Well, you just turned her $180K bonus into a 7-figure retaliation case." The junior HR rep actually flinched. He leaned back in his chair, laced his fingers behind his head, and added, "Thanks for making our job easier." Nobody spoke after that. Maria didn't smile much, just the faintest curve, like a weight had lifted off her lungs. Her attorney placed a hand gently on her arm, didn't say a word. They didn't have to. The room already knew how this ended. I never testified. I didn't need to. My name wasn't mentioned, but they all knew. The general counsel didn't look at me in the hallway anymore. The VP, who used to call me our rock, suddenly forgot to copy me on anything strategic. Even the CEO, though he never spoke to me directly again, sent out a company-wide email weeks later announcing his pursuit of new opportunities, like we didn't all know what that meant. Maria's payout is still confidential, but I know the number, and it has 2 commas now. She moved cities, new company, better one. I get the occasional postcard, usually with one line, still here, still standing. She earned that. They tried to bury her with silence and policy language, but all they really did was put it in writing, and I made sure someone was watching.